Deconverted Man here. I'm going to be responding to a video called Why Atheists Should Believe in God, uploaded by this particular YouTuber. And I'm going to do so without counting up how many logical fallacies he's made and things like this. I'm going to answer his questions as best as I'm able to, and try to explain to him a few things that perhaps he's unaware of. Hopefully, he'll hear my points. That is my intention, that is my thrust, that is my effort here. And if you're going to respond to his video in text or video format, please do so in a civilized, polite manner, and remember to attack the ideas, not the person.
I just wanted to make this video to anybody who may be an atheist and who does not believe in our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. And I just want to say just one thing. Why would you not want to believe? If you believe it, you know that there's no life after death, that it's basically all over and nothing else.
The question here is, why would you not want to believe? I can't really answer the question the way that you phrased it because it assumes that I have a choice in the matter. If I asked you, why would you not want to believe that all of the bad things that have happened to you in your life have in fact not really happened? You might want to believe that none of them did, that all of these bad events were actually non-events. They were false memories. They were not real. But even if that is what you wanted to believe, and doing so would be a problem, but even if that is what you wanted to believe, you can't just make yourself believe that all the memories you have of bad things aren't real. If I say, why do you not want to believe that gravity is real? Well, gravity is real. We can't just disbelieve in it because we want to. We have overwhelming evidence that it's real, and to ignore it might be something that places us in significant danger, more so if we're near any cliffs. So, asking this question in this way is something that nobody can really answer because it assumes that you have a choice in the matter. There's simply things in life that we do not have a choice in the matter. It's not a matter of desire. That is to say, why would you? So, there is no cognitive ability that allows us to decide to think that something is true or not true. There is nothing like that within the brain as far as I'm aware. There's no way to force oneself to believe in something without reason or cause. Now, believers in any religion, anywhere in the world, have causes for what gets them to the point where they're able to believe. And skeptics around the world have reasons that cause them to not believe. And that's an interesting topic in and of itself. But as far as your question goes, I can't answer it the way that you phrased it here. I can guess at what you're trying to say, but I don't want to do that because I don't want to create what's called a straw man.
Why would you not want to believe that after death there is everlasting life given to you by a supernatural being that loves you, that created you for a reason?
Again, I really can't answer the question, why would you not want to believe X, Y, and Z, because it assumes I have a choice in the matter. I don't have a choice in the matter. I have to think that certain things are true, and if you want to call that belief, fine, because I have overwhelming evidence that certain things are true, or, in some cases, I don't have any evidence that certain things are true, therefore I cannot believe that they are true.
That, for all purposes, gave you life. And you want to believe that, you want to believe everything against that he didn't do that, that everything came from nothing.
So, in text format, I linked to my video that is the meme "Atheists believe the universe came from nothing." I did that because I would hope that you listen to that video, and you hear the points that I made in that video, and that you understand that what you have said is invalid. It is not correct. I don't believe the universe came from nothing. I have no idea if the universe came from anything at all. And I don't know for a number of reasons. And I could give you those reasons if you're interested. What I do know is we can trace the origins of the universe way back to a singularity. And there's a point that our data simply runs out because we can't peer back far enough, either with computerized models or actually by looking at the observable universe and seeing the light as it reaches us. We just can't see that far out yet, and so at best we would have educated guesses. So because we would have educated guesses, I'm not going to go off on an educated guess. I'm going to wait for the data. And if we don't have the data, then I'll have a mystery. And right now, regarding the origins of the universe, if it even has an origin, perhaps it was in that singularity state for all time. I don't know. I have no idea because I don't have the data. And that's what I base all my ideas on. I don't want to say the word belief, but I understand that you might want to use that word belief. So that's what I base all of my thoughts on, is data, not assumptions, not guesswork. So regarding at least the origins of the universe, I don't know anything more than what the data can tell me. And it's not a matter of that's what I want to believe. It is a matter of that's what I must believe because that's what the data says. And I'm not going to argue against what can be observed, what can be tested, what can be found to be true in the real world. I'm going to go with where the evidence leads. Regarding the afterlife and things like that, there's no positive evidence for any of that being true. If there was, then I wouldn't have to believe it. I could know it was true. I would have ample amounts of data and information about it. But I don't. I have no data on it. And so I can't just believe it's true because it sounds good, it might feel good, etc. I'm not going to do that. I need solid data to go on.
I'm not here to try to convince you, but why would you want to believe that after death, that's it?
Again, this is the same question. Why would you not want to believe something else? I don't have any evidence that after death there's anything at all. When I observe animals, insects, plants, when they cease to live, when they expire, that's it. They're dead. Now, what happens to them depends on a lot of factors. So, if I pick a plant out of the ground, it is still alive for a while because it still gets water, and if I cut it up, at some point during the cutting up of it, it dies. When that happens is something that you would have to have some instruments involved in, but nonetheless, it will eventually expire. I clean it up, and I consume it. Okay, so the plant has ceased to live, but it's becoming energy. It's becoming energy for me, specifically. So, that same scenario would also occur just in nature. If an animal came by and ate the plant, it's still dead, but now it's energy for the animal. Now, when an animal dies, usually its body decomposes and feeds the ground nutrients. Now, it might also have fed a different animal. Perhaps another animal ate it, and that's why it expired. So, again, something is happening to it, But as far as the consciousness that existed inside the animal at whatever level it existed there, that has ceased to be. That is no longer necessary. Insects, same thing. Very primitive forms of consciousness, or perhaps we wouldn't even call it consciousness, but perhaps we would call it instinct. But nonetheless, when an ant expires, it doesn't be anymore. Now, there is this very interesting creature that lives in the sea. Sea life is so fascinating. This is a plant that shoots out spores and eggs and sperm, and they become a living creature with a brain. This living creature swims along until it finds the right rock, plants itself into the rock, and its brain dies as it becomes this plant. It literally metamorphoses from a living creature into a plant. Its brain ceases to be the moment that moving is no longer required for its existence. It dies, yet it lives. Its consciousness, if it had one, or its instinct, whatever was in its brain, no longer is needed, so that expires and becomes food for itself. So, looking at the facts that are known, I look at the human brain, which is different than all of these other creatures, but nonetheless constrained by the same properties, the same facts of the world that we know about of these other creatures. And consciousness is a result of everything that happens in that brain. When that brain stops functioning, consciousness will stop being. When I expire, or when you expire, or when anyone else expires, that's it. There is nothing more, as far as I can tell. It matters not what I wish, it matters not what my desire is, because wishes don't change reality. If they did, I would wish for $1 million at the very least, and for perfect health, and then I would wish for the problems of the world to go away, and so on and so forth. I'd be a living genie, I suppose. But wishes don't change things. Desire doesn't change the facts of reality. If I had some reason to think that there was something more after this life, then that's what I would think. But we call it life for a reason. It is life. It is living. It is existing. And when that stops, that's it. It stops. End of story. It was a good story, but don't focus so much on the end, because it's the journey that mattered.
Nothing else happens from that on. Would you not want everlasting life?
Again, my personal desires have no impact on whatever reality might be, but I will try to answer your question. I would like to continue to exist. However, this is the reality that I know about. So I don't want to bet on the idea that there's a different reality that I know nothing about. I'd rather continue to exist in the reality that I know about. Perhaps my brain will be put into an android body somehow, and perhaps technology will be created to keep my brain young, and the quality of life would have to improve significantly to make all of that worthwhile. Now, if it happened to be that after my brain stopped functioning, that I found myself somehow in a realm where I existed anyways, I don't know anything about what that would be like, but if it's going to continue forever, I might get bored. I might not get bored, but I would like a way out. I would like a red button, if you will, that I could push to stop existing. In this reality that I do know about, there is a button that we can press to stop existing. metaphorically speaking, of course, we can commit suicide. Now, I don't think that you should commit suicide or that anyone should, but nonetheless, people do, and our life, independent of committing suicide, will eventually end no matter what. Now, again, we might develop technology to change that fact, and if anything is going to give us anything close to eternal life, I think it's going to be technology and science. It's not going to be some mystical, supernatural stuff. So, that would be my answer. If there's a way out in this eternal realm that you're talking about, then fine, great, wonderful. I have no problem with it. If there isn't a way out, if there isn't a way to get out of it, just in case, then I wouldn't want to continue to exist forever without that knowledge that I could get out anytime I wanted. Okay? So that's my honest answer to that question.
In heaven, and all you have to do is believe that he created you?
This is a pretty big assumption that you've made. I think that what you're saying is reality is this way. That if you believe X, then Y will happen. If you do not believe X, then Y will not happen. And why reality would be set up in a way where my belief is what matters rather than what the facts are, I don't know. But nonetheless, if that is how reality is, I am still constrained by how I approach reality. In every other instance of reality, I can test and verify that something is true. But when it comes to this most important aspect of reality, that is something I cannot test or verify. Why would it be different than anything else? The very fact that it is different is a logical fallacy called special pleading. We have to make a special case, a special exemption for this. And I can't believe it because I have to be skeptical because I agree with how logic functions. Now, if I stop agreeing with how logic functions, then anything goes and everything goes. Which means I still don't have to believe it, and now I just don't need any reason at all, because logic is no longer an issue. So I don't even have to explain why I believe or don't believe X, Y, and Z. So, either way, I'm stuck where I am. I can't get past this barrier of having no empirical evidence, no repeatable test, and, at least in my case, no logically coherent argument. If I had one of those three things, or better yet, all three, I would not have to be skeptical of this idea. But because I don't, I do have to be skeptical of it. So if reality is set up in the way that you are suggesting, where I have to believe X for Y to happen, I have to believe in a particular deity, your deity, in a particular manner, and then if I do, then I'll get heaven and other rewards. Okay? If that is how reality is set up, then I am barred from entering that reality because of the way that I understand everything else in this world. Why a deity would set it up knowing that I will be a person that is barred from entry, I don't know. But I have no choice in the matter. This is how I am. This is how my brain functions. This is how I hope my brain will continue to function. And if that deity cares anything for me, it will remove that barrier and give me the three things that I'm asking for: empirical evidence, repeatable test, and a logically coherent argument. Not have somebody else do it, but do it itself. And I would also ask it not to just give it to me, but to give it to the world, and it would change everything about everything. And don't just say, well, that's going to happen. No, that's not good enough. It has to happen right now on my time, because my time is limited. And it can't happen, well, it has to happen on God's time, you have to have more faith, blah, blah, blah. No special pleading, no excuses. If this thing actually legitimately cares about me, then it will give me these things. It has not, so it does not care about me. And you can make all the excuses you want, but that will continue to be my conclusion. Period. That's the way that my brain works. That's the way that logic works. That's the way science works. That's the way that I perceive the world to work. Now, if you want to tell me I'm wrong, fine. But you're still going to have to give me one of those three things that I asked for. And if you will not or cannot, then I am skeptical of whatever you're saying, whatever your conclusions are. And that's it. I can make up any idea and ask you these questions in reverse, which is known as a reductio ad absurdum. I could come up with an idea that says, if you do believe in God, you will go to hell, and if you don't believe in God, you will go to heaven, because the real God is the skeptical God, who only cares about the skeptics. So why don't you want to stop believing in God? Because if that's true, then you'll go to heaven. And if it's not true, then you'll go to hell. So see, you need to stop believing in God because the actual God doesn't want us to believe in it. So why do you want to still believe in God? Stop believing in God and then you'll get your rewards. This is also an additional problem in logic that's called appeal to emotion and ad ballum. So the appeal to emotion would also be called properly a bribe. I'm going to give you this wonderful, wonderful thing, and all you have to do is this, whatever that is. That's a bribe. Now, the ad ballum is an appeal to the stick, an appeal to force. If you do not do what I want, I am going to kill you. That's an ad ballum. It's considered an ad ballum for a number of technical reasons. For example, a police officer who holds their gun at you and tells you to put your hands up, and etc., 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 that is not technically an ad ballum, because after you get arrested, you will have a trial and have a chance to make your case that you are in fact innocent. So you can challenge the system and win your freedom. So it's not technically an ad ballum. An ad ballum actually occurs when there is no chance to reason with the entity telling you that you must do X or you will perish, or something else bad will happen. When you have no chance to question the authority that is pointing the gun at you at all, that's an ad ballum, okay? So, the robber at the bank, the people have to give them the money. Even if they don't have a weapon, technically they're supposed to give them money if they demand that they give them money. And if a mugger comes giving your money or else, you give them their money. Because you don't want to find out what the or else is. This is not an argument. It's something you don't want to do, but you're going to do it to preserve life. Because life is more valuable than non-life. Typically, we like to survive. Okay, so that's an ad ballum. So, we've got a bribe, and we've got an appeal to the stick, an ad ballum. Neither of those are logically good reasons to do something. Just because, and maybe they're true. Again, maybe I'm going to get this wonderful, beautiful, nice reward if I do this. And maybe I will get this awful, terrible punishment if I don't do this. But neither of those things are a logically coherent reason to do the thing that I'm being asked to do. I'm going to give you $1 million if you run through a mall butt naked. From start of the mall to the end of the mall. You have to run through the mall butt naked singing, "I'm a Little Teapot." Now, I'm going to give you the $1 million. But it's kind of embarrassing. And you might be worried about being arrested afterwards for public indecency exposure. Okay. But you're going to get $1 million. So, come on. And if you don't do it, I'm going to knock off your sister. I'm going to, I'm going to kill her. I'm going to have somebody kill her. Well, that's horrible. Now, obviously, there's things you could do. You could report a person to the police, etc., yada, yada, yada. But we're going to assume that you're in a position where you can't bargain for some reason. Okay, well, then you no longer have a choice in the matter. If you want your sister to stay alive, you better run through the mall. But you won't see me as a good person even though you receive your $1 million at the end. Because it's tainted by the negative thing that I said I was going to do if you didn't do this. Okay? The very fact that the next person I put in the same scenario as you decides not to run through the wall naked and their sister gets killed, that should taint your money. Okay? There's a movie called The Red Button, or The Button. And I'll have a link to the movie page in the description below. And I want to use that as an analogy. I'll summarize the movie. People get this magical button that if they push it, they'll get a large sum of money. But somebody will die. If they don't push it, they won't get that large amount of money, and that's it. So, do you push the button? Well, somebody dies, somebody you don't know, but still, somebody is going to die if you push the button. You'll get a lot of money. But, yeah, I don't push the button. Do you? That's a good question. So it's the same sort of thing in a different way to look at it. And fiction can be good for looking at things in different ways and thinking about things in different ways. That's why I bring it up, okay? But I'm not going to go along with this is a reward, this is a punishment, do it, you get good thing, don't do it, you get bad thing. I'm not going to do it, period. And, well, then you'll get the bad thing. Fine, then I'll get the bad thing. Okay. I'm still not going to do it because it's not logically valid. I'm going to refuse because it is not a valid system. And if I get the good thing, what kind of person does that make me? Because there are people that are getting the bad thing. And that system is invalid. That good thing is tainted by the bad. It's not justified. And it can never be justified. So that makes me immoral. And I'm not going to do something that I consider immoral.
What would you have to lose? If you believe in him and you get to heaven and you realize that everything is what you expected it to be.
So the question is, what do you have to lose? And the best way to answer this is to do the Reductio ad absurdum. Okay, I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to tell you a truth that I have discovered. If you go outside at midnight tonight in your underpants and you sing I'm a Little Teapot Short and Stout and you dance the teapot dance and then spin around in a circle 3 times counterclockwise, you will live to the age of 1,112 as long as you don't get any accidents and get killed by that. But you will not die from age until 1,112. What do you have to lose? Try it. Do it. Now, also, you have to record it and put the video up so that we all know that you did it, okay? That's part of the requirements. I didn't mention that, but that is part of the requirements. What do you have to lose? Well, dignity, self-respect, a few minutes of your time. Yeah, but sure, but the rewards! My goodness, the rewards! And if I'm lying, then so what? You live a normal life. But why take that chance? Maybe I'm not lying. Maybe this is a truth about reality, and everyone has just thought that I'm making it up, and so no one has done it yet. But maybe if you do it, you'll get that life. You'll get to live that long. Oh, well, now you might say, well, I'm a Christian and I want to see God sooner. But nonetheless, come on. Why not? What do you have to lose? What if I change it to something different? What if I say, okay, instead of living to 1,112, you'll get $1 million. Now, you'll get it in 20 years from now. You'll get it. Or your next of kin will get it. Your family will get it. Or somebody you like will get it. Okay, so you do it, you wait 20 years, you don't get it, you've proved that it was wrong. Sure. But what did you have to lose by trying? And it has to be tomorrow night. It can't be the night after that. It has to be now. What do you have to lose? Now, are you going to do that? No, you're not. Even if it was true, let's say it was, and no one does it, why is no one doing it? Somebody will try it because, people do weird things. And my point here is, the answer is because we don't do things unless we have sufficient reason to believe that the thing that we're doing is going to produce a result. So you will not go out there, you will not sing, you will not do all of that because you have no reason to think that you're going to live that long or that you'll receive any amount of money in 20 years. I could swear up and down that you will. I could ask you this question over and over again. You're still not going to do it. The answer is because there is no reason to do it. There's no reason to think that it is true. I have to give you a reason to think that at least one person out there has done this and gotten those results. Then your skepticism will lessen. And you'll think, okay, well, one person did it. But I need to know that that person actually exists. I need to verify that they actually got the results. If it's the case of 1,112, that they are really high up in age, maybe they're 500. Okay, well, that's, at least I'm going to live to 500. But what if that's a coincidence? Then we need scientific testing of this. We need repeatable tests. Because it's not just enough to go on that one person did it. We need to see a demonstrable demonstration that it is a thing. And the what I have to lose is not much. It's a moment of my time, some dignity. Right. But what I have to lose is far deeper than that. Because what I am doing is something ridiculous with no reason. I have no reason to expect to get a result. So what I have to lose is my ability to be skeptical, potentially. If I'm going to fall for that, I've got some swampland to sell you, right? I've got some bridges for you to buy. They're not built yet, but buy them now. Okay, or any number of scams and ideas that one could come up with. A couple days ago, I was called, and they said, you just were picked by the government to receive a grant for $9,000. And I said, who's this? And they made up a name. I said, where are you calling from? They said, Washington. I said, who's in charge? And then I said, what's the address? They hung up. And I called back the number. Nobody answered, nobody answered, nobody answered. Well, yeah, I can report that to the FBI, but it's not going to really get anywhere because these things are fly-by-night scams. They show up, they do their scam, hoping that somebody will be stupid enough to fall for it, and then they disappear. The government's not going to call people up and say you got any amount of money because the government never gives out money. You have to beg and plead and jump through hoops to get money from the government. And even then, you might not get it. Even if you legitimately do deserve a grant, it's hard to get a grant from the government. They're not just going to call you. So, being skeptical protects you from the charlatans of this world. And that's what you have to lose by doing something that we would find ridiculous, like singing in your underpants as you spin around in circles. Okay? So, although it might be less ridiculous to believe in a deity for some people, I can't do that without reason to think that it is a thing, and I don't have reasons to think that it's a thing, and merely offering me a bribe or threatening me with a punishment is not enough for me to think that it is a thing.
then that's the most amazing feeling in the world. But if you don't, and when you go to heaven, you realize that you were wrong, and then you're sent to hell.
But there are Christians out there that says that God doesn't send people to hell. It's me. It's my fault that I get sent to hell. But again, oh well. Tough. I don't care. Why don't I care? Because I have no control over that. I don't get a trial. It's not a trial. It's not justice. I don't get to defend myself. It's, you didn't believe. Beep. Go to hell. You believe. Go in. That's not justice. That's not mercy. I have no control over the situation. And once I'm in hell, I'm screwed. There's no way out. It doesn't matter. Right? Well, some denominations think that there might be a way out. Of course, if you're Catholic, you might believe in purgatory, which is then where I would wind up, actually. In fact, most people actually wind up in purgatory, I think, under the Catholic definition. But what about Allah? What about Allah? Well, if we're wrong about that, then you and I are both screwed. If Allah is the actual God, and you can't just say, well, but it isn't. If Allah is the actual God, then when you find out that Allah is the real God, you'll get sent to hell or the equivalent, and so will I. And we'll both be there going, well, damn, that sucked. But there won't be anything we can do about it, because that will be the way it is. But I have no reason to think that Allah is a God or exists at all. Nor do I have any reason to think that Yahweh is a God or exists at all. And merely saying that, oh, but if you're wrong, bad things will happen, is not an argument. I can make up any number of deities and say the same thing, and again, with the Reductio ad absurdum, I can posit the skeptical deity who rewards unbelief but punishes belief. So, it's not an argument. It's not any reason to think that it is so.
I don't understand why you'd want to risk that. Why you don't want to believe. There are, you can say that evolution is true, you can say that creationism is true. But there are some people you're not just going to convince. But I'm here to say to people who believe in evolution, not creationism, which is that God created everything, why would you not want to believe that God created everything?
Okay, so we're now in a different sort of question and answer segment, okay? You are of a particular denomination within Christianity, with a particular doctrine, a particular teaching, okay? Now, Christianity teaches that there will be fake teachers. There will be false teachers. And it doesn't, unfortunately, tell you how to identify those people. But I will tell you that your teacher, your pastor, preacher, minister, whatever you might call him or her, and it probably is a guy, I'm assuming because you're a fundamentalist, that they are a false teacher. How can I say that? Because they are telling you a lie. If you are hearing this at church, and I assume that that's where you're getting this idea from, maybe you heard it somewhere else, I don't know. But if that's where you heard this idea from, then whoever told you that is lying. Biological evolution is completely and separately a different issue than believing in any God whatsoever. Okay? What the difference is the doctrine that that church promotes, or that that group promotes. Okay? One group promotes that it's all a lie, which is a lie. The other groups don't promote that, although they might promote it by not saying anything against it. I would implore you to join one of the groups that isn't against the facts of science. You can leave that doctrine without leaving Christianity. You can be a Christian who is smart and intelligent and well-informed, and you can embrace the science that explains the world And you can come to a point that the earlier Christians did, where as they discovered things about the world, they saw it as glorifying God to do this. And they didn't say that it's wrong. They said God is awesome. Wow, God let us discover this new thing. If it comes to biological evolution, wow, God's telling us something new about the way things work. And that means we have to try to understand what God was saying to us earlier in Genesis, for example. Maybe we had the wrong idea of what Genesis was, and God's trying to teach us that by giving us this knowledge, by letting us have this knowledge, by letting us discover this knowledge. And so you can have science as an extension of worship to God. Many Christians have realized this and are on the ball. They're fine. They have no problems with them other than the one problem I do, which is when you say God is real rather than God is a belief. Then I have a problem. But nonetheless, I have less things to argue against with them than I do with a creationist. A creationist is wrong. Period. No ifs, ands, or buts. They are wrong. They have gone against their own Bible because it says don't create a stumbling block. Don't eat meat in front of somebody that doesn't eat meat. And you're doing that. And I do eat meat. But you are doing something that creates a stumbling block, a barrier between me and possible salvation. So your doctrine, therefore, must be wrong, and I will have nothing to do with it. And you know, well, but biological evolution isn't true. You're wrong. You're wrong if that's what you're saying, if that's what you're promoting, if that's what your group is promoting. I will never, ever, ever join that group, period. Nor will the vast majority of all the atheists, skeptics, agnostics, and many others that exist in this world. We won't join a group that claims that something is true when it's not true. If there was a group out there that said the world was flat and you had to believe that in order to be saved, you wouldn't join that group. You would say you're wrong. Okay? Because they are wrong. You couldn't join that group. No matter how much you might want to, you couldn't get over the fact that they were promoting something as ludicrous as that. If there was a group that said that the moon is a hologram, and that's what our God said, and our God's the best God, most wonderful God, you're going to get all these riches, rewards, etc., and even the people that don't believe, they're going to have possible redemption, yada yada yada. They're a wonderful community. They love people. They help people. They donate a ton of money to charity. They donate their time to good causes. It's ridiculous. And these are the best, nicest people ever. If you're ever in a trouble, they call you up. They help you out. They hug you. They hold you. They help you find a mate. But yet, the fact that they have to believe that the moon is a hologram, that's going to prevent you from joining that group. I would hope. It certainly would prevent me from joining that group, no matter how terrific that group might be. Because they believe in something fake. They believe in something false. There's overwhelming amounts of evidence for biological evolution. Do not make an argument from ignorance. Go study biological evolution. Learn about it. Find out more about it. And let this doctrine go. Keep Christianity, fine. But let the doctrine go because it's a false doctrine. And you are creating a stumbling block by being part of that doctrine. Believe in God if you want, fine. But don't deny science. There's no reason to. When I was a Christian, I didn't have a problem with biological evolution. I did have a problem with the Christians that denied it. I found that abhorrent and offensive and despicable, and I still do today, but more so. Because they're arguing against the facts of this world, and if this world has been created by God, then they're calling God a liar. And I'm not okay with that. Even as a skeptic, I'm not okay with that. And if you want to ever possibly save anyone, you have to leave that evil, wrong doctrine behind.
It just does not make sense why some people would not want to believe that they were created for their own general purpose to do something, and that they, after death, it is nothing. I'm not going to try to convince you otherwise.
Why not? Give me a reason. Your whole video is called Why Atheists Should Believe in God. That's a suggestion of what content I should find in the video. And then to say, I'm not going to give you a reason, not just once, but twice in this video you have said that. You said that you're not going to argue that, or that you can believe in creationism or biological evolution, although you said evolutionism, which isn't a thing. You said that. Okay, I disagree. You should accept biological evolution because of the overwhelming facts about it. And if you aren't aware of those facts, then you should learn about those facts before you try to talk about a subject that you know nothing about. Okay, fine. But what's my reason to believe in God? You're not offering me one. And I find that as a disconnect that you have here that you should be aware of.
But there's several videos, including Bill Nye debating Kim Ham, and it's just how you view it. And you can...
Seriously, you do realize you're addressing atheists who are going to be on Bill Nye's side. And, in fact, there will be Christians who will be on Bill Nye's side. Why? Because Bill Nye was right. Now, you can disagree with him on the God part, but not on the science part. Biological evolution and the age of the earth are well-established facts in reality. If you're not with us in that, then I will never, ever, ever be with you on the idea of your particular God. I can't. I cannot depart, I will not depart from reality to go down that bizarre rabbit hole into your Alice in Wonderland. I will not do it. I don't want to do it. I cannot do it, etc. I've made that point before, but it was worth restating, I think. So, Kent Ham has the wrong doctrine, and if you agree with him, you also have the wrong doctrine. And for that reason alone, I couldn't agree with you.
You can view everything by being human and seeing everything that humans have come up with, ways of seeing how old the earth is, or you can believe the supernatural being that created everything.
This is what's known as a false dichotomy. It is a false choice between two alternatives. Either it's this way or it's that way, and it's false. There's more alternatives. Perhaps, might I suggest, that God created the world and the universe. Well, actually, it would have had to be that God created the universe and let the universe create the world. But nonetheless, he created it in such a way that biological evolution would take place. Perhaps that's what God did. Perhaps God had a hand in helping biological evolution along every now and then or something. Or maybe he created the universe in such a way that it could run on its own without further guidance. I don't know. But those are possibilities that you're leaving out of this equation, making it a false dichotomy. Okay? And because it's a false dichotomy, I can't agree with it. I can't accept it. I won't accept it. And it's not, and if what you're positing is true, then I would reject deity. Because you've said either it's going to be science or it's going to be God. Well, then I'm going to go with science. In fact, without science, you wouldn't have your phone to record a video into. I'm assuming it's a phone. You wouldn't have the internet. You wouldn't have computers. We wouldn't be talking. You wouldn't have clean water. We wouldn't have the sort of houses we have. We wouldn't have vehicles, etc., etc., etc. Now, if you want to live that way, please join the Amish community so that we don't hear from you again. And you're welcome to do that. and you would be closer in line with what the teaching is that Ken Ham promotes than you are now. See, that's why I can identify it as a false teaching, because you don't practice what you preach. If science and technology, which we have learned by studying the world, which are man-made things, and also women-made things, by the way, then you should all be Amish. Period. Okay? That's the way it should be. You should all be Amish using no technology at all. Actually, the Amish don't go far enough because they still use technologies because they still have wheels, which are technology. But the very fact is, the idea that we can't go by what man has done means that you shouldn't use anything technological, period. You shouldn't take any medications. You shouldn't go to the doctor. None of that. And you might survive a while in that life, or you might find that you get sick and die. I don't know. But then at least you would be practicing what you preach. You cannot use technology and start to argue against things that we've discovered to be true in the real world. It just doesn't work. You're being a hypocrite, and because of that, I can identify that your doctrine is wrong, and because of that, I reject your ideas, plus the fact that I have overwhelming evidence to the contrary. So I have more than enough reasons to reject all of these ideas.
Evolutionists cannot explain the Big Bang Theory or how we have consciousness.
You're right, and you shouldn't expect them to. And besides that, evolutionist isn't a thing. It's biological evolution. It's its own realm of science, okay? Now, having said that, if you want to know more about the Big Bang, you need to learn cosmology, not biological evolution. The two are not connected. If you want to learn about the consciousness, then you need to learn biology, which is a subset of biological evolution. But biology helps us to understand the brain and its mechanisms. Now, if you want to get more detail, then you're going to have to go into neurology, which studies how the brain works. But you're going to have to learn a whole bunch of things that man has created to get to the point when you understand how the consciousness is a thing. Perhaps also you might want to study psychology as well to add to the list of things that man has created. So you're going to have to learn all these things about man to understand the things that you want to understand. So, darn, I guess you can't learn about it, which means you're making an argument of ignorance, which means I have to not believe what you're saying because you're performing a logical fallacy. And to understand logical fallacies, you would have to learn informal logic, but that's another thing made by man, so I guess you can't do that. So I suppose that means there's no reason for me to think that anything that you have said is true. So if you're trying to tell me why I should believe in God, which as you said, you're not going to give me any reasons anyways, you have failed in every single way that you could possibly fail to get to the goal of what your video was titled. That's kind of a problem, I think. I think you might want me to believe in God. I think that you might want me to have an eternal life. I think that you might care about me in the sense that you care about my soul and you care about my salvation. I'm assuming that these things are true. Now, I am telling you, in order to even have a chance to get to a point where you could possibly save my soul, and it wouldn't be you, it'd be God, I understand all that, but still, for you to be an effective tool of God, you're going to need to leave your incorrect doctrine behind. And if you will not or cannot do that, then I will not and I cannot listen to what you're presenting because it is a false doctrine. And I'm trying to get you to recognize and realize that it is a false doctrine so that you will leave it behind. You will explore science. You will explore and understand these things that you do not understand now. To any degree you want. It could be a very mediocre understanding or it could be a very deep understanding. Perhaps you'll even get a degree in one of these fields. But I don't require any of that. I require at least a basic understanding of these things before you talk about them. And certainly, you won't disagree with them once you see the empirical evidence for them. And you'll leave behind this idea that it's God or everything else. That's not a correct understanding. Because I can disprove the Bible if we're going to use that as an idea. And if you want me to demonstrate how that's possible, I will do so. You'll have to ask me to do that in a future video. If you don't believe my statement here, I could disprove the Bible using your idea that anything that man has created is wrong. Okay? I can demonstrate that the Bible is false using that idea, if you want me to. But I hope that you, even if you do ask me to do that, I hope that you don't miss my point here, which is to get to a point to be an effective tool of God, you're going to have to leave this doctrine behind.
If you believe in supernaturality, we can explain that. We are the only logical explanation for why we can think and for why everything is created.
No, you don't get to say that because you don't have a logically coherent argument. Now, I would love if you could present one, but you cannot, so you will not. But don't use the word logic until you understand what informal logic is. Please, please, educate yourself on that. And I said you should begin with biological evolution, but then the next thing might be informal logic, okay?
Evolutionists cannot predict why the Big Bang Theory happened. We can. There is no Big Bang Theory. God created the heavens and the earth.
Please don't make assertions without some support for them. That might be very much what you believe, but unless and until you demonstrate that it is true, using empirical evidence, repeatable tests, and or a logically coherent argument, I have to think that it is false, and everyone should think that it is false. And again, perhaps it is because of the false doctrine that you're part of.
That is the only explanation, point blank.
If this is really where you're coming from, and if this is really where you intend to end, then we will not be able to have any sort of dialogue. I would implore you to not start here. To not start with, I have the answer! It's this! Bam, 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 bam! Oh, my word! This is the only way! Don't do that! Okay? Please! I beg you not to do that. Alright? Start with, I could be wrong, or I don't know. Start there. Because from that point, you can learn things. You can learn amazing facts about reality that you've never known. Germ theory, for example. How we're able to cure diseases. How we're able to conquer sickness and produce longer lives. We weren't able to do that before, but now we can, and we have so many more things. We went to the moon. We've sent probes to Mars, and it won't be long before we're going there. I find that amazing what we can do. Our brain is the most sophisticated tool that we have. Please use yours. Don't just give in to the Bible said it, that settles it mentality. Let that go. You can still be a believer in God, and a very passionate one. My brother, who I think I've mentioned it every now and then, he is a Christian. But he is not a fundamentalist. He is not a creationist by any standard. He is the most open-minded Christian and the most honest Christian that I have personally yet encountered. He has admitted to me that he knows that within his mind there is something that he cannot challenge. He has admitted that. He knows that that's a problem. He doesn't know how to overcome that. But when it comes to science, he has no problem with agreeing with science. And when it comes to logic, he's trying to learn logic and understand logic and come up with a logically coherent argument for God. He is trying to do it. Something that he says that he hasn't seen any other Christians doing. It's like they're not even trying. And in response to videos like yours that I've showed him, he has said in the past that it makes him embarrassed to be a Christian. I intend to show him your video and get his verbatim response video and upload that as a video on my channel. Because I think that his views are necessary to come from his own mouth. But my point here is, you can let this doctrine that is wrong go and still be a believer. And I would have far less problems than I would now. I understand why my brother believes. I know why he believes. And I was there myself. We chose different paths. I can't go back until I get what I need to go back. And he knows that, and he recognizes that, and he accepts that. And to get him off of this path would require the same things that I require. He needs empirical evidence, a repeatable test, or a logically coherent argument. Actually, for the last one, he's actually, I think he's more inclined to go with the first two. I need to show him that Christianity is false somehow, which I've tried to do every now and then, but I don't really like debating him because he's my brother. But my point is, please don't miss my point, you can stay a Christian with your passion, with your awe of God, and leave behind the nonsense that you're promoting. And it all starts with this position of uncertainty leading to certainty, if you will, okay? But you can't start with I'm right, because that ends it. Because I can say that too. I'm right, and you're right. Okay, now who's right? We can just go, I'm right, back and forth, and neither of us will get anywhere. What we need is a system to establish which one of us is right. The system might be informal logic. That's my field. It might be science, which is something that I would implore you to learn about, but I would have to turn you over to other YouTubers to help you understand better, because it's not really my field. Okay? But we need a system to decide who's right and wrong. Not just pointing at a book and declaring that that book is real and true, and that's the end of the argument. Because I can do that too, and no one gets anywhere by doing that.
They cannot explain it, but that brings me back to my first point. Why? Just why would you want to believe that there's no God?
Well, this is actually slightly different from your first question. Why would you want to believe there is no God? Again, assuming that I have control over what I believe or don't, it's not a question of what I want, it's what evidence I have or lack of evidence. Now, is there a God? I don't know. What is a God? Who would know what a God was? Where would we be able to find a God? And could we identify it if we did find it? What would it be like? I have no idea. None at all. There's multiple reasons that I would have to be skeptical of a thing called God. The first and foremost being, I don't even know how to identify it. There's this documentary called Oh My God, and it may or may not be available in your area. It's hard to track down. But nonetheless, in it, the documenter is asking the question, what is God or who is God around the world? And he asks this one guy about it, and he points to this monkey that all these monkeys are crawling around, and this monkey, he points to it, and he says, if I told you that is God, would you recognize it? And he said, no. And he said, that's the problem with your question. You see, what if that monkey was God? How would we know? That is to say, how would we know it's not God? Maybe it is God, and it just assumed the form of a monkey for whatever reason, a sufficient reason that it had. Why not? God could be a monkey if it wanted to be a monkey. God could be me if it wanted to. God could be a computer. God could be anything, or nothing at all. Or maybe God is everything. Or maybe it is a monkey. Who knows? I don't. Maybe it's lobsters. Whatever. I don't know. But would we be able to recognize it when we saw it? I think the question is deeper than we can really explore in this video, but It's, I guess, akin to, would we be able to identify infinity if we found it? No. The answer is no. We couldn't. If it was infinite, we would never get to the end, so we would never know that it was infinity. And so, even if we found infinity, we wouldn't be able to say that it was infinity. So even if we found God, we might not be able to say that it is God. We would never know for sure that it was, because it might be the monkey and we might be missing it, because it was so different from what we thought it was that we just didn't recognize it when we did find it. And that might be the way it is. And there might be a God, or a thing that we would call God, out there somewhere in the universe, or beyond the universe, or above the universe, or inside the universe, or anywhere else you want to locate it. And that's an interesting idea. But that's all it is until I have more to go on. It is an idea that exists inside the human brain, and as far as I can tell, nowhere else. Maybe God is that monkey. Maybe God is something more or less. And without any more information about it, I cannot think that it is. I have to be skeptical. There might be leprechauns on a planet somewhere else. There definitely aren't here. Or if they are, they're hiding very well. But I don't have any reason to think that they're here. I don't have any reason to think that they're somewhere else. Even if it's possible, I don't have a concrete reason to think that it is so. So I must be skeptical about it, which means I must not believe that it is. That doesn't necessarily mean that I believe it is not. That doesn't necessarily mean that I believe that it cannot be. But it does mean that I cannot say that it is. Absolute zero is a temperature that we have not yet observed, but we think it could be a thing. And if it is a thing, it is a very weird thing, and it changes the way things work, and it's a very fascinating subject. But I get to be skeptical that absolute zero exists in temperature until we find it and say, here it is. I get to be skeptical about it, even if I'm fascinated by the idea of it. Until we have the data on it, I have to be skeptical of it. Okay. So saying all of that, I cannot think that there is a God until I have some data on it. What is God, first and foremost? And how would I know that it's God? Those are questions that need to be answered before I can even get to saying that God can or can't be a thing. And once we start putting in different information about God, I have to say, where did this information about God come from? If I hold up an invisible apple and say, here's an invisible apple, how in the world do I know that it's an apple? And the more I take away from it, the less and less it becomes anything like an apple. We can't put it on a scale. You can't taste it. Only I can. And I did a video called The Invisible Apple. Go watch that. I'll link it as well. Okay. So, I don't want to not believe in God. I don't believe in a God. Neither do I believe that there is no God. That is to say, I am not willing to believe anything in either way on that subject because I don't even know what a God is. So that's my answer. Everybody's answer is slightly different. And that's what makes humanity so interesting. Is nobody's the same. And so everybody that you're going to approach with this question is going to have a slightly different answer. That's the answer of this particular skeptic. And I call myself skeptic first. My atheism is a result of my being a skeptic because I lack a belief in God. And that's become the popular idea of what atheism is. Although it might not be the dictionary's definition of what it is. Although that too will change over time. I don't believe in a God. That doesn't mean I believe that there is no God. I don't even know what God is. I can say there is no God if I wanted to. In the same way I can say there are no leprechauns or unicorns or fairies or demons or dragons. But saying that is kind of a shortcut. And I'd rather be more precise in my language and say, I don't believe that there are dragons. I don't believe that there are leprechauns. I don't believe that there are fairies or unicorns or giants or demons or etc. I don't believe in those things. I don't believe in giants or orgs or dragons. G-O-D. I don't believe in it. That doesn't mean that they can't be, it just means I don't believe in them.
Why? I mean, honestly, what do you have to lose? There's nothing that you can lose.
I already answered this question, so same answer as before.
You can, I mean, if you're right, look, you have all, if you're right that God does exist, then you have this eternal life through Him in heaven.
I've already answered this, and I'm going to cut out anything that I've answered already from now on so I can address the questions that I have yet to address.
And why can you not just get through your mind that God created us?
Because there's no empirical evidence, repeatable test, or logically coherent argument for it. But there is empirical evidence and a repeatable test and a logically coherent argument for the idea that God is nothing but a construct in our mind. And there's multiple avenues of science, psychology, and logic itself that I could use to address that point. So, because I have evidence for one, but not evidence against the one that I have evidence for, and evidence for the other, then I have to go with what I have evidence for, which is the idea that God is merely an idea that exists in our brains and nowhere else. And unless and until somebody argues against all the multiple points there, and then constructs an argument for their points, I have no reason to think that I'm wrong. I'm willing to be wrong, but right now I have no reason to think that I am wrong.
I just thought that I'd let anyone out there who does not believe in Jesus Christ, or the Lord, for that matter, that God created everything. I just thought that that would be a good thing to say.
I love your passion, but it's placed in the wrong position. Put it into learning and educating yourself about biological evolution, science, and perhaps informal logic. Please, I implore you to learn about these subjects. I love your passion, but it's just placed in the wrong position. You can still maintain a belief in God, learning about all these subjects, but of course your doctrine will have to be left behind.
Well, I hope that I've given you something to think about. I'm a true Christian, and if you know anyone who's a Christian, I encourage you to go to church, to do anything to get closer to God, because I promise you, it'll be a gamble that you do not want to take. You need to find Jesus, and you need to find the Lord. If you really don't want, if you don't want to take that bargain to go to hell, if you're wrong. That's it. Thank you for watching.
And I hope that I have imparted to you my position on these subjects and questions that you've proposed. You didn't give me a reason to believe in God at all, or your particular God. What you gave me is an empty promise of a reward and a threat of punishment. Those aren't logical reasons to think that something is. I'm not going to be kowtow into believing something, nor am I going to believe something because believing in it will get me a reward. I will think that something is true when I have empirical evidence, a repeatable test, and or a logically coherent argument for it. I have none of those things here, so I will not think that any of this is true. Now, having said all that, I would implore you again to learn biological evolution, learn about science, learn about informal logic, to leave this false doctrine behind. It is causing stumbling blocks for others, and it didn't deconvert me, but it certainly didn't hurt in my deconversion. I was a Christian, but I stopped being one because I looked for Jesus. And you might find that odd, and if you want to understand that further, I can reference you other videos I've made where I talk about that. But nonetheless, I stopped being a Christian because I actually performed an honest look for Jesus, and I couldn't find it. I looked for the evidence, and I found none. So I couldn't continue to believe because of that. If you want to insist that it's real and true, but provide zero evidence for it, then I have zero reason to think that it is real or true. And if you want to say, well, it's all just faith, then faith is false. And as long as I have facts and you have faith, I will always, always be right, and you will always, always be wrong. You have not presented a logically coherent argument, or any repeatable test, or any empirical evidence, or anything other than a threat and a reward. That's not good enough. That isn't enough. I hope I've given you something to think about, and I implore you to learn about the subjects that I talked about, biological evolution, science in general, and perhaps informal logic. If you will not educate yourself, then remain ignorant, and I will stop responding to you, and others will begin to probably make fun of you for being ignorant. And you won't understand why, because you will be ignorant of the topics that you want to debate. And you will be one more stumbling block that will encourage more people to become skeptics rather than to become Christians. That is the result of the doctrine that you are following. So if you want to help deconvert people, stay in that doctrine and keep promoting it. And you're only helping my side by doing that. Thanks for listening.